welcome. I hope you're enjoying the day and going to classes and talking to professors and students and staff and having all your questions answered. Again, my name is Maritza Hernandez. I'm the Associate Dean for Enrollment and Student Services, which means that I think that just boils down to I get to work with students, which I love. It's my favorite part of the job. And so this is my favorite panel to moderate because we get to hear from our wonderful students. And so what I'll do, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions, so what I'll do is I have two of my colleagues here who work very directly with students in Student Affairs, the Office of Student Life, and directing the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life. So I'll have them speak first about the resources, what is available here, because as I think you're learning, there are many opportunities, many resources, and so they're wonderful people to hear from. And then I'll introduce our students and we'll hand them off, because that's, I think, the highlight of this panel is them. So I'll start here with my colleague, Tim Welsky. He's the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Again, my name is Tim Welsky. I'm Assistant Dean for Student Affairs here at the Divinity School. I'll tell you really briefly what that entails and how we support student life and success here at the school. First and foremost, there are a lot of opportunities that you would find for engagement within the community of colleagues and students, faculty, and staff here within HDS. So my office partially helps support some of those things. So those include opportunities like our many student organizations, of which we have about 40 right now, ranging from a variety of different topics, affinity groups, religious and spiritual practices. They do a lot of work in community building together, both internally and focused on their own common interest and coming together with one another around common interests and identities, as well as doing programming within the community. So we provide a network of support for that, supporting programming, providing funding, allowing for opportunities for connection and student-led events within the community. We also have a lot of traditions here that we support that are within the life of the school, like community tea, which happens every Tuesday from 4 to 5:30, where we come together, share food, share drink, share announcements, talk about what's going on, and just take a break from classes and the other rigors of life. My colleague Carrie Maloney will talk a little bit about noon service, which happens every Wednesday. We also have events throughout the year, like the charity ball and theological review and Thanksgiving dinner. Yes, coming up, which are incredible and lovely and wonderful sort of markers in the life cycle of the school. But beyond that, there's a lot of ways that I and my office help support students in terms of counseling and advising, connecting you to resources, providing some academic support, providing accommodations for those with medical needs and impairments, providing access to writing support, to learning coaches, strengthening your academic skills, helping you make a transition possibly from another field or from another discipline into doing the work here and to being successful, connecting to medical resources, mental health resources, and otherwise getting you what you need. One thing that's very clear about coming to graduate school is life doesn't stop. Other things are happening, health is happening, family life is happening, relationships are happening, and you will occasionally find yourself needing help, needing resources, and maybe being out of your context and needing to know what's available to you. And I'm here to help you do that, along with many other folks here within our network of support at HDS. Another opportunity I wanted just to raise up a little bit is that we also, consider there to be a wealth of opportunities for engagement co-curricularly beyond just what you're going to learn in the classroom. So there are opportunities to engage in writing, whether it's for Culture, our academic student-led journal, or the WIC, our arts and literary journal. Carrie can tell you more about some other opportunities as well. Leading one of the student groups, being engaged in the student association. We have a student conference fund to help fund some students who have had their papers approved to present at conferences or otherwise involved in professional conferences to be able to attend. So last year we sent 16 students to conferences around the country and around the world. We just sent another 11 this semester, and we'll have another process in the spring to do that. We've started for the past couple of years offering what we call the Skills Series, which is an opportunity for us to nimbly respond and bring to students opportunities for on-site training in real concrete skills that they can go out and use in the real world, whether they're mediation training skills, counseling skills, financial management skills, or otherwise. So we want you to be aware that when you come to HDS and you're thinking about what the life of the student is like, it's rich. It's very rich, and we've got a very strong community of people here to support you in your growth and in your efforts.
Thank you. Now I will have the Director of Religious and Spiritual Life, the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, Carrie Maloney.
So, hi, everybody. How y'all doing? Overloaded? Yeah? Overfed, maybe? Yes, yeah. Sleepy? Yeah. Well, we are so glad you're here. Thanks for making the time and taking the great journeys that many of you have to come visit us. We're delighted to welcome you and help you think about your next step here, whether it's with us or someplace else, but we hope that you'll think about us. So as Mirza said, I'm the Director of Religious and Spiritual Life, which means I have the most fun at HDS all the time. I go to parties all the time. I just crash people's religious events all day long, all night long. It's great. It's great fun. So Harvard Divinity School is many things, and it is certainly a place, as you've already heard, of cross-cultural engagement and rich inquiry. We take seriously the investigation and the interrogation and the analysis and the deconstruction and the reconstruction of religious and spiritual traditions, and we also take seriously their practice. So if you come to Harvard Divinity School, we hope that you will consider exploring and deepening your own spiritual practice, whether or not that's connected to a particular faith tradition or many faith traditions. Many people come with multiple religious belongings, and that's certainly an increasing factor in our lives here, and one of my dear friends to my left who will maybe say a word about that. Many people come with no religious belonging. How many people here may belong to the group now known as religious nuns, N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N-S? Yeah, increasingly there are more people, and that's the biggest growing demographic for people under 30 in this country, who don't belong to any particular religious tradition but are open to many. And we take that as a kind of serious belonging too, a belonging to no belonging. And you will hear that there's even a group for you here now. So what does my office do? I'll be very quick so you can quickly hear from our students. We help oversee some of the organizations that Tim referenced. We have close to 20 or a little over 20 now, I think, religious and spiritual organizations that are student-run groups. And they all have their own very rich practice lives. I mean, you can come here and be an Anglican. You can come here and be a Muslim. You can come here and be, you know, you name it, fill in the blank. And if you are the only one here, then you form a group and you invite others to join you, and you're a group at Harvard Divinity School. Two's a group, three's a crowd, so you'll be fine. If you don't see something here, you put it here, and we're a very small community, so we're responsive to people's fingerprints, and we like to think you leave your fingerprints all over us, okay? So we help oversee that, and then once a week, as Tim said, we have this Wednesday noon service, which is hosted by a different one of those many groups every Wednesday. So we don't go for the lowest common denominator, let's offend no one thing here. We're into let's offend everybody here. Speak in your own tradition. If you believe in, you know, you fill in the blank, then you praise that being or the ancestors or whatever, and we all join you. How many were here for noon service today? Or you had lunch, I know. So there are vows that we make to one another at the beginning of each noon service, promising to be with each other across our differences and to live in that discomfort. And it's very rich, and it makes for endless wonderful dialogue. So we've had, you know, Greek Orthodox masses at noon service. We've had Buddhist sittings, you just name it, we have it. And so that's one thing that my office does, and we help oversee some communal religious and spiritual engagements. Like we've got a contemplative evening retreat coming up, which we do every autumn and every winter here on campus, things like that. And some social justice and community engagement too, and I can say more about that. And then the other piece of my work is very much in line with what Tim talks about, of accompanying people in times of stress or difficulty and joy, whatever it is. Life happens while you're at graduate school. In addition to, reading Foucault, family unfolds and things emerge. And so we are here to accompany you through all that. So there's plenty of support. I will close by offering two pitches to you. How many of you have visited the HDS website? Yes. Okay. Now I invite you to go really deep into the HDS website, because there are all kinds of treasures there. You can learn a lot more about student life and all kinds of things. One of the things you can learn a great deal about is religious and spiritual life. If you click on community life at HDS, you can see religious and spiritual life. And we've got all kinds of things in there, great treasures. One of which is Conspiracies, which is our online journal, Breathing Together the Breath of Life. And it features the writings of faculty, students, staff, and alums at the intersection of the intellectual and the spiritual life. If you want a taste of what it feels like to be in this community, you put your ear to the ground of that digital journal, and you'll get different voices and different heartbeats, and it's really quite beautiful. So that's one pitch. The second pitch is look out the windows when we don't have them blinded. I don't know if anybody told you, it snowed here on Sunday. Did anybody hear that? It actually snowed on Sunday. And I say that as a word of encouragement for those of you who aren't from New England. This is a place, New England is just very, very rich in the seasons and the natural life and the natural world. And if you come to study at Harvard Divinity School, we hope you'll get out beyond our walls, not just out into the cities of Cambridge and Boston, which we hope you will, and we have all kinds of ways for you to do that, and through my office, through Tim's office, and field education, because that's really where you're going to meet, where the text that you're reading in the library will come to life. But we also hope you'll get out into the world and experience the beauty of the seasons, where you're really going to meet the depth of your spirituality. Okay? So do check out our websites, and don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call any of us or email us after today if other questions occur to you.
Thank you, Carrie. And that's a great segue to our students, because I think Prudence mentioned this morning that our school is so diverse that we can't represent it in a panel. And so this is but a small representation of the diversity of interest that our students have here at HDS, and in the ways that they get involved within the school, but also outside the school, in the wider university and the wider community. And so we've asked them to share that with you, sort of in the ways that they have found community as they define it. During their time here while they're studying. And so what I'll do is I'll introduce them, I'll read their bios, and we'll start with Gail and kind of move our way down. And so I'll start with Gail. So Gail Doctor, sorry Gail. So Gail, before coming to HDS, Gail worked as a business writer and print and web designer. She co-founded Bright Happy Power, a foundation that works with children and families living with catastrophic challenges such as cancer. She is an editor and contributing author of the Faces of Hope book published by Boston Children's Hospital. Gail is a third-year Master of Divinity candidate. She's also a United Church of Christ member and is in discernment, accepting approval for ordination in spring 2015. She received the Harvard University Hopkins Shareholder Award in 2014. At HDS, she has worked on summer orientation for incoming students and community building for her student denominational group, Disciples of Christ and United Church of Christ. Transformative experiences through HDS include studying immigration issues firsthand on the U.S.-Mexico border, that's where I got the pleasure of getting to know her better. through her field education in parish ministry, including exposure to women's prison ministry and working with high school students striving for sobriety at Recovery High School, and her internships in medical chaplaincy, hospital and hospice settings. Gail values her relationship with HDS classmates and life in a pluralistic faith community. Gail's been married for 30 years to Chris and is the mother of 2 daughters. Sarah is now a nursing student at Northeastern University, and Jessie died at age 9 after living with cancer for 6 years. Gail currently serves on the Ipswich Cultural Council, volunteers for the Trustees of Reservations, and is past president of the Rotary Club of Ipswich. She enjoys writing, painting, kayaking, kickboxing, and yoga. Sitting next to her is Aisha Ansano. Aisha is a second-year Master of Divinity student who is in the Unitarian Universalist Ordination track. Her interests include religious pluralism, interfaith dialogue, and contemporary lived religion in the United States. Aisha is originally from the island of Curacao, which I didn't know, and grew up in Durham, North Carolina, and spent 5 years in San Francisco Bay Area before moving to Cambridge. Outside of school, Aisha loves to cook and bake with and for other people, and to travel around the world and have adventures. Next to Tim is Stephen Dry. Stephen is a third-year Master of Divinity candidate. As a lifelong United Methodist with an interest in interfaith dialogue, Steve was excited about the opportunity to prepare for ministry with colleagues from different faith traditions at Harvard Divinity School. While at HDS, he has had the opportunity to facilitate youth interfaith dialogue in Israel, provide spiritual care to patients in an interfaith setting, and participate in the planning of noon service. Steve currently works as a graduate assistant in the Office of Career Services. And next to Steve is Fatima Albanawi. Fatima is a Master of Theological Studies candidate, focusing on women, gender, and Islamic studies. She is currently HDS Muslim Council's logistics coordinator, working on interfaith, Islamic communities of interpretation, and forms of cultural coexistence. Fatima is currently a teaching fellow for intermediate Arabic at the college, Harvard Yard. Prior to moving to the U.S., Fatima worked as a psychological caseworker at the Family Protection Society in her hometown, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. An integral part of Fatima's current work is her undergraduate degree in psychology from Ifat University in her hometown. Fatima co-founded the Theater of the Oppressed chapter in Jeddah as part of bridging social phenomenon with the arts and as a form of expression. Fatima's research interests include ethnography, agency, and forms of resistance and coexistence. She enjoys painting and writing, and when she's visiting home, she doesn't miss a chance of delving in society and diving in the Red Sea. So this is our wonderful student group, and I'll pass the mic down to Gail.
Hi. I'm scooting back so I can see everybody because we're sort of in this curve. So I was thinking about how I would describe to community to you guys, or my experience of community. And one thing that I always tell people about HDS when they ask me how our graduate studies going is that the best thing that I will take away from this 3-year experience are my relationships with my classmates. The professors are world-class and fabulous. The setting is wonderful. When I was 20-something and walking through Cambridge when I was a young married person, I never thought I'd be here, so it was kind of mind-blowing to get here. But it is truly the people that came with me to this school and that I met who are already enrolled here that make this place what it is. And those are the investments and the connections that I will leave with. And those connections happen here. They happen at the Rock Cafe a lot. I would say that the Rock Cafe is sometimes the heart of this campus because people are always talking, and you'll have conversations there that you just can't quite imagine starting in any other place in your life. But once you start those conversations here, they seem to trickle into the rest of your life, and you can't stop talking about the deep and profound and meaningful subjects that you are grappling with here with so many different and interesting people on this campus. Also, people like to show things like cute kitty cat pictures from the internet and stuff. So don't let us fool you. We are real people, and we have all of our vices and regular interests. To share with you ways that my classmates have shaped me and helped me, my relationships have grown in other places, like when we went to the Mexico-US Arizona border. I was with a group of very diverse people, and we all had really different perspectives on the immigration issue and the experience of those who were incarcerated. We watched some very, very difficult things, and when we came back and people asked how was that, it was hard to say, oh, it was a great trip. It wasn't vacation. It was studying a really hard thing. And we were all together making sense of it. And the relationships of the people that traveled and studied and felt things together is profound. And I will now know those people in a new and different way. And I will be able to talk to them about it, but I can also pick their brains about different ways that they saw it. And have other voices that can enrich my own perspective of that experience. And that's true for any class that I've ever taken. I learned so much from people coming at things from a different way. And I love to be able to tap those talented minds and hearts. This summer, I did a parish ministry for a little tiny church up in New Hampshire. And their minister was on sabbatical, and they were committed to studying Buddhism while she was in Buddhist majority nations all over the world for 3 months. And I've learned some about Buddhism here, but I'm not an expert at all. But one of my classmates is both a UCC ordination candidate and a practicing Buddhist and a history professor. Now, how many places can you get that really great combination? So I started asking her, would you come and do a lunch and learn for my little parish up in New Hampshire after church so that they can ask all their questions, at least their starting questions about Buddhism? And sure enough, she came and we had a really great workshop, and she got that congregation poised to really feel that they could do the meaningful work that they were doing together, reading books and thinking about what it means to be in relationship with other faiths and movements, and do it in a real way, and not leave their own spiritual identity. She was the person witnessing to them that you can be who you are in your faith tradition, engage with something else meaningfully, and not endanger yourself, but actually grow yourself. That was a great thing to be able to share. And 2 of my classmates are going to help me run a retreat in January. They're both working on forms of forgiveness and reconciliation in their senior thesis. One of them is talking about the theology of forgiveness for trauma survivors and how, on a personal level, you can access your spiritual resources without hurting yourself more and re-traumatizing yourself. Another one of my classmates, who is the great-great-great-granddaughter of slaves, is grappling with the profound impact of slavery on our society and racial reconciliation in the US. And she's coming to talk to the women that we're doing this retreat with about the societal ramifications and process and practices of reconciliation and forgiveness. And how relevant is that topic in a year when we just had a forum called Michael Brown's Body? I am able to bring the conversations that we are having here to tiny little churches in New Hampshire where every person is white and privileged and lives very far or feels removed from the things that we are seeing in our world. But they want to be connected to them, and I can bring voices to them and perspectives and things that I learned from you to them, because I believe that all people want to grow, all people are spiritual, and given the option, they will have real, heartfelt, hard conversations. Those are born here, they grow here, and they go out into the world and they do real work. And for me, that is the gift of this community. This community reaches out and it keeps going.
Thanks, Gail. So I want to second what Gail said about the relationships and how important they are here. I love my classes. I've taken wonderful classes. I look forward to taking more. But I think the community at HDS is equally important. There's a lot of emphasis among students, among staff, among faculty that the other things you're doing are just as important to do. You're not just here to take classes and then leave. You're here to kind of integrate all the different aspects of your life. I like to say that at HDS we have what is the best possible problem, which is too many things. How do you choose from so many wonderful things? And it's not just that there are a lot of things, there are also going to be a lot of things that you want to do. And that is a great thing, and it is also a really hard thing. How do you choose which things you do? So I am the events chair on the Student Association this year. I'm on the noon service planning committee. I am a member of the UU group on campus. I am a founding member and on the board of the Religious Nuns, which Carrie talked about. So there's a lot going on. I came to HDS last year and started going to noon service and really, really loved it. It's a really beautiful space to get to know some of your community members a lot more deeply. And get to kind of walk alongside them in their own tradition, and then also if you're part of a group, to share that with other people. So I joined the committee that kind of helps that keep running smoothly, which entails doing the announcements and prayers of the community and opening sentences. So that is something that I've committed to doing here. Carrie and Tim both talked about student groups on campus. So last year, a fellow student was interested in it started actually as a humanist group, and reached out to see if anyone was interested. And I had come to HDS not affiliating with any tradition, but feeling very strongly that a religious community or a spiritual community would be a good place. So we started this group. There were 4 of us in it last year. We realized pretty quickly that we didn't all identify as humanist, and so maybe a humanist group wasn't the right thing for us. So we started calling it the Religious Nuns. This year, there are probably at least 8 people every week, and we have an email list of probably about 25. And it is a diverse group. There are people who identify as atheist, as agnostic, as secular humanist, as UU, as spiritual but not religious, as a member of a religious community that doesn't have a space either on this campus or kind of a gathering body in general. There are people who identify with a religious tradition who want to learn how to better work in dialogue with the non-religious, or however else we categorize that group. So that is a pretty diverse group, and just want to attest to what Carrie was saying about, if it's not here, make it happen. Last year we were 4, and this year we're a lot more, and people were excited about it. So that felt really cool to be part of making that happen and kind of helping shape what a group like that looks like on campus. We meet once a week for various conversation. This year we're integrating a little more of having people share their spiritual practices or questions every other week, and then we talk about them and kind of sharing that with them. Like I said, I came in spiritual but not religious. I found Unitarian Universalism here on campus as part of the UU group here, so I've been a part of that. Carrie was also talking about reaching out beyond these walls. Last year for our spring retreat, the UU group went to Walden Pond, which is where, Walden was written, and we got to have that be part of our retreat and kind of reflect on that, which was really, really cool. I know that HUMS, the UU group, does service projects and other things in the community, and I know that a lot of other groups on campus do that too. What else? I'm doing my field education placement this year at Simmons College, which is a small women's college down in the Fenway. That has been a really great way to kind of take these things outside of these walls. I'm working in their Office of Spiritual Life with their interfaith team, which involves a lot of logistics and a lot of coordinating, and also a lot of ways that I can really put the things I'm excited about and learning about into practice. How do we coordinate interfaith events? How do we have interfaith dialogue? What sorts of things work with that and what doesn't? Which is really cool to be able to directly take my education out, and that for the MDiv field ed is for credit, so it counts as really as part of the curriculum, and I think that goes back to what I was saying about it's not just the classroom, but that is considered to be part of your education. Beyond kind of these structured things, I think that I found a lot of great relationships in various ways, whether that is just spending time with people to do our homework together so that we don't have to do it alone, or taking study breaks, or whether it's doing service or doing something fun. These really are deep relationships. They're not just classmates that you talk to in class and then see again next week. I've really found a lot of really wonderful and really deep friendships here that have helped when life keeps going on. And kind of just along the same lines, it's not necessarily community, but I just want to put in a big plug that I have found a lot of support through the Harvard Mental Health Services, just through the health services. And that, I think, goes along with having the Office of Student Life and the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life. There are resources beyond HDS. It's really easy to just kind of get caught up. HDS alone has so much to offer. It's hard to want to look beyond that. But I found both for kind of mental health things, but also beyond that, there's so many lectures and events going on that you can kind of stay as secluded in HDS or go as far out as you want. And I've been learning how to kind of find that balance of getting everything I can out of HDS while also getting everything I can out of everywhere else. And it's a hard balance, but there is a lot of good stuff here at HDS and in the wider Harvard community and in the Cambridge community in Boston that I think it's pretty easy to find the things that you're excited about and interested in and make them part of your experience here, and so that they don't feel like they're tacked on, but that they're really, really a part of what you're here to do.
Thank you, Aisha.
Hi, everyone. So when I was asked to talk about this, about community life, I was thinking about what I was thinking when I was in your position. So as Maritza said, I was interested in ordination in the Methodist Church, but also really interested in interfaith work. And one of the big concerns I had coming to HDS was whether or not I would lose my faith or something like that. So I thought I would share a little bit with you about some of the resources and community life that has helped me to both pursue my interest in serving the church, but also my interest in interfaith work. So I'm going to hit on two kind of big offices, the Office of Ministry Studies and then the Office of Career Services. Full disclosure, I do work there, but I would have brought it up if I didn't, because it was also a big selling point for me about HDS. So just to kind of talk about ministry studies for a little bit, one of the really cool things about being at HDS is that it's multi-faith, and therefore there's a large sort of representation of denominational counselors, which means that you have people who are potentially within your tradition, or you can certainly probably find someone to mentor you. In my case, there's a denominational counsel for the United Methodist Church, and I was able to talk with him and develop a relationship with him. So I felt like I was constantly being nurtured in my own tradition, while at the same time being in a space that was opening me up to other ideas. At the same time, Carrie's office, the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, offers different kind of affinity groups. I don't know what you would call them, but there's a United Methodist Covenant group that also helped me to just stay within my tradition. At the same time, as I mentioned, you're sort of not within the tradition at HDS. And so that meant that people like Emily Click and Dudley Rose were available to talk about sort of what are my qualms with the Methodist Church, or what am I thinking about X or Y. And so just having that space to be open and to discern really meant a lot to me. And so I would just kind of hold that up as that sort of tension between having the space to be able to pursue your faith and at the same time being challenged by it on a daily basis. I'd also lift up the field education that the Ministry Studies Office provides, and Laura Tuak is an amazing resource. If you haven't met with her, I would encourage it before you leave. There's so many different opportunities for you to pursue whatever ministry you're interested in. I was able to work in an interfaith youth dialogue group, organization in Jerusalem, thanks to the Office of Ministry Studies and their international field ed grants. And then this past summer I did CPE at a Jewish Geriatric Center. So being a Christian working in a primarily Jewish setting, I think was really formative and helped me to really discern some of my questions around pastoral care. So those were really helpful things, and things that I think were really catalyzed by the work of the Office of Ministry Studies. So I'd hold that up as something to keep in mind as you're spending your time in the next few days. Take a walk over. It's just right next door. They're really great people and a huge resource. And the other is career services. And like I said, I work there now, but mostly because I have been so involved in a lot of their stuff and just really have found a lot of support and resources there. So take a look at Divinity Hall, first floor. That's where most of our resources are. There's a carousel of tip sheets. And Susan Lawler, who is the director, is actually having office hours after this from 3 to 4. But why career services? I think for me, one of the big things was I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to do afterwards. And so I think being aware of the different opportunities that have availed themselves of HDS grads and where alums sit, that we can really take advantage of previous students and whatnot, and be able to network and use that Harvard network to get jobs, to get internships, things like that. Susan has just so many connections, and really could be a valuable resource to anyone. So I would encourage you to reach out to her, today, or as you're applying, once you get in, just to share your story with her and get to know her. So yeah, I think those two things stick out to me as really influential parts of the community life at HDS, and I hope that's helpful.
Hello, my name is Fatima, and I'm a second-year MTS student. I'm concentrating on women, gender, and politics, and I think there are two things that I feel like my semesters are all divided into themes. That's how I think I'm just OCD or something, but I like to organize things. So in my head, the first semester kind of took a theme of very political Islam, social movements, things like that. That was in my courses, the nature of my courses. But then the second semester was more Sufi, literature, and I think this was one of the assets or the strengths of HDS is that you really can play around with the courses, but also in a way it adds up to your experience, and so you're not, for 2 years, you're not just concentrating on one thing. But then as for my extracurricular, outside of the classroom, I think it's HDS, but also beyond HDS or Harvard-wide. And I think at HDS, my first semester was basically I met with different councils, different societies, and I joined the Muslim Council. I think it was very interesting that I was from Saudi Arabia. I am from Saudi Arabia. And and a lot of the people were Muslim Americans. It was very interesting for me to see the dynamics, to see the differences, and to see where I fit. I was like, at the same time, I was an insider and an outsider. Like in my classes, I was studying my region, but also being from the region. I was put in situations where I kind of like represented Saudi in a way, and so that was interesting. I think so yeah, that's number one. Basically, joining the Muslim Council, a lot of people would be like, "But are you Shia or are you Sunni? Like, what's your?" And I'm like, "I'm just Muslim. Like, what's I just wanna. That's my experience here. Like, it is." To break these, divisions of like very strict kind of like, are you this or that? You need to like choose one. And of course that has consequences of like where you stand and how you locate yourself and your arguments and everything. And the other thing is basically the opportunity of engaging beyond your classes or the nature of your denomination into just doing things that are more who you are and like what skills or like what you like to do, who are the people that you want to hang around with and like spend your time with, and how can you do about that, what can you make of that. And so one of the things is that because of my experience last year, I thought it was going to be like a smart idea to have a lecture series where I host people from Saudi Arabia to speak to people at HDS. And so we had a series of Skype calls with a social media activist who has a very satire-like channel on YouTube. And it was like a funny interaction where, we saw some of his episodes on YouTube. People, were shocked in a way, or like they were just not expecting it. We had another one a week after with a woman activist, where we called it from mopping to honking, and it was also very interesting. It was intense. We had a big audience for that. And then the third one was about the art scene and how it contributes to social movements, to the underground culture, where that is, how does it speak to the world, does it really speak to the world, does it only speak to people in it? And then my role in that, how do I bring that to HDS, how do I bring that to Cambridge, to Boston, to the US, to people around me, to my classrooms? And also, another thing, for example, is this weekend is Harvard Arab Weekend. And as you mentioned, I co-founded the chapter of the Theater of the Oppressed chapter in Jeddah. And I don't know if you're familiar with this type of theater, but basically the audience shifts from being spectators into spect-actors. And there's no division between stage and audience. So people from the audience come up and basically take the role of the oppressed and empower the oppressed. We're having a play on Saturday, if you want to come. And basically, I think this had been like an opportunity for me to play around with things that I already started back home, but to see how they could play here. And like, I think this is the longest time I took to actually come up with a play because of the diversity of the audience that I'm going to have, in contrast to the audience in my basement in Jeddah. But basically, I think it will be very interesting. I hope it works out. And I think it's all about this. I think it's the diversity of the audience, where you locate yourself, what you want to do. I think, as Aisha mentioned, it could be very overwhelming to choose from the amount of things that are available for you. But the question then becomes, what I have 2 years here, what I want from them, how, who do I want to be after these 2 years? And so one of the primary things for me is that I don't see myself now, or I don't see that this part of my life, I don't want to really put it into like being head of an organization or something. I want to work on projects. And so since the summer, I was working on this play. And last year, my project was the series of talks. So I think it's just putting yourself in context and saying, okay, there are a dozen different things I could do. Pick and choose. because I have 2 years, I don't have like 10 years. So I think it's that kind of question that I keep asking every single day. It's a never-ending question, I think. But I think at the end of the day, you kind of like just find yourself and do what serves you well and what you could bring to the table, something new, something beneficial. Yeah, I think that's my experience, and it would be nice to hear some of your questions. I literally, the moment I came into this room, I just remembered last year, because I came to this day, and it was interesting because I didn't know where I am and like what do I want to bring. Like, I'm Saudi, I did Islamic studies. Do I want to do Islamic studies? I was applying to a human rights program and a women and gender studies program, but then I found here that I could combine these two under the perspective of, the theological studies, which is fascinating. I feel that it's very unique in that sense. Yeah. Well, thank you. I remember too.
Well, thank you very much. As you can see, our you can see why it's our favorite part of our job for Tim and Carrie and myself, because our students are fantastic, and they tell, that, like I said, this is but a small representation. The admissions office actually has a great admissions blog that has more voices from more students. So I would encourage you to check that out, because there's wonderful perspectives there that you can find. But we have about 5 minutes for questions, so opening the floor. Yes.
Many of the students that you guys here and throughout the program have mentioned obviously being involved in the spiritual groups in whichever form, but you guys also mentioned being involved in other organizations or things throughout the whole Harvard community. What are some examples like that? And obviously specifically being that a lot of the concentrations and stuff are cross-discipline and go in other colleges as well. So do you have examples of different things you get involved in?
Who wants to tackle?
Outside of HDS, specifically other
Events and activities?
Sure. I mean, unless anyone wants to, I can speak specifically. We have at Harvard a small pilot of university-wide groups. I sit on the oversight board for that. So right now we have 15 who are currently recognized. Many of them are based on affinity groups focused on nationality. Some are focused on human rights initiatives or interfaith work or some other themes. So I would say that's a literal opportunity for university-wide connection in groups. There's also a Harvard Graduate Student Council, which brings together the schools around some certain programming that they coordinate, a leadership conference, a ball, some other opportunities, tailgate opportunities and things. So those are some really structured official ways that it happens, but it also happens informally through conferences and events that students plan together and collaborate on. The provost's office has a funding pool. I sit on the selection committee for that too. And so if any 3 schools, groups of students from any 3 schools come together and request funding for a program, event, conference, they can put that on and get some support in doing that as well. But a whole lot of organic things happen too, just because students organize them. Yep.
Yeah, so my question is in terms of your student life in the classroom. I was kind of wondering, I'm used to professor-to-student ratio is kind of small, so you get a very personal relationship with the professors. In terms of having accessibility to the professors within your program or in your class, how can they help you? Are they accessible, and does their relationship help you grow as a student within your program?
Most classes are pretty small at HDS. There are bigger classes. I took in last fall 4 classes. One of them had 20 people, one of them had 15, one of them had 8. So classes tend towards small compared to large, and I think that does make it easier to interact with your professors. I have found professors to be pretty accessible in terms of just sending them an email or catching them in the hall, but I think even easier is if you're in a class, to just before or after catch up. We meet with our advisors at the beginning of every semester to go over study cards, but I have also I have switched advisors, met with my advisors outside of that scheduled time, just sent an email last year. I actually switched from the MTS to the MDiv, and I was starting to think about that process. I just sent my advisor an email and set up a meeting with her and had a conversation. So I found that to be pretty easy.
And I would say, as you're taking classes, you'll probably find professors that are focusing on topics that you're interested in, some that you may not even have known that you were interested in. Also, the teaching fellows, so the doctoral students who lead the sections are actually also excellent resources. They're a little bit closer to where you may be in terms of your studies, but they have really interesting focuses. But all of them are really accessible one way or another through office hours.
So, do we use last name, Mr. Welsky, or is it Timothy, or?
Tim's fine.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry, my college uses all first names. We're always on a first name basis, so I'm like,
Pretty much the
a
case
little
here,
weirded out
too.
by this. Culture, yeah. Anyway, so Tim, you spoke a little bit in passing about the logistics in regard to how events come to fruition, like who pays for them. The way it works at our college is that we ask the student senate for money, which is held by a debit card by the student senators, and we ask conference and events planning, and they rent out a space for use. I was kind of curious about the particulars of logistics.
How that works here?
About how how an event say I'm an HDS student right now and I want to rent out this space and use a projector here to show a Skype teleconference. How do I?
Okay. Yeah, let me run through that real quickly. So there are a number of options. The Student Association, which Aisha sits on, has a finance committee. And so all of our student fees goes to them in order to disperse funding for student organization programming specifically. So we have anywhere from 80 to 120 programs that are put on by our student organizations each year, from weekly spiritual practices to large-scale conferences. So a lot of that gets funded in that way. My office also has a couple of other funds, a student initiatives fund, so any students who want to take advantage of a timely topic or something that's happening in the community locally and want to create an event around it, who aren't necessarily part of a student group can just come to us and ask to put on that event, and we can fund those through my office. We also have a diversity fund, so any event that's focused on public dialogue around diversity that's open to all in HDS, we can get funding. We have a funding source for that kind of programming specifically too. And then, there are other, sometimes, sources of funding beyond in the wider community through centers or such, which oftentimes provide co-sponsorship, and there are some cases in which we have multiple sources of funding going on for the same event, if that helps.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. I'll go to you.
Two questions in one. Well, it's for Stephen. Hi, I'm curious, when you were working with the Jewish patients, how did you, I mean, you coming from a Christian background, how did you interact? Was it difficult interacting with those patients based on different theological backgrounds? And my second question is, do they, within this school, do they have groups more towards I mean, I'm very much interfaith, but I'm also interested in evangelical, born again Christian, or, to nurture spirituality, Protestant, but not mainline groups.
Well, so the first question was about my interactions with patients at the Jewish Geriatric Center, and I'd be happy to answer that, and I would then maybe pass that other question on, because I'm not totally sure of the second question. But in terms of interactions, it was definitely difficult at first. Clinical pastoral education, or CPE, is all about sort of forming yourself as a pastoral caregiver. So, the sort of initial experience of having to sit down with someone for whom you felt different was something that sort of was just part of that process. But yeah, part of what I learned, at least for myself, was that it wasn't so much about who I was as a person of faith, like I could bring that to the table, but that it was ultimately a lot more about who I was serving, and that I was much more of a sounding board or even a vessel for what they were sharing, and then using some of the frameworks and things that I had been learning, being able to help them to come to understandings for themselves in their own faith tradition. So it was definitely difficult, and you know, I think CPE in general, people would say, is a fairly kind of difficult process and experience, but ultimately very formative. So I'd recommend it. And then I'll pass on.
One other thing that I didn't say, and that is that there are groups at HDS, in the university, and in the greater Boston and Cambridge areas. And if you don't find it here at HDS, the university has 31, 32 different chaplains from different traditions who work at the university but not for the university, and they are here for everybody, and they all run groups, including the Graduate Christian Fellowship is one of them. And then if you can't find it in the wider university, you can certainly find it in Cambridge and in the greater Boston area. So there are plenty of opportunities to find your communities. Okay.
Sorry, we don't have time for more questions. Please join me in thanking our panelists.